What if I told you that everything you think you know about who runs the United States is a lie? That a country that claims to champion freedom and democracy is held by the invisible strings of a puppet master? What if I told you that it's not the lawmakers in charge, it's not billionaires like Elon Musk, and it's not even the president? What if I told you the true power lies in the hands of a shadowy figure you'd probably never even heard of? A man who single-handedly created a trillion-dollar company that has granted him the ability to shape markets, influence policies, and even sway American elections. Today, we're going to talk about how one man went from losing $100 million and became a Wall Street outcast to holding the reins of an entire country in his hands. Larry Fink was born in 1952 in sunny Van Nuys, Los Angeles. A rapidly growing neighborhood in the central San Fernando Valley, Van Nuys was the perfect backdrop for our hero, or villain, depending on who you ask, to grow up in. Larry's mother was an English professor at California State University, and his father, the proud but humble owner of a shoe store. Though he had two siblings, his father chose Larry to help out at the shop. Why him? Well, young Larry was the least academically gifted of the three children, so his father thought it was important for him to learn a trade. Little did he know it would one day be Larry calling all the shots, but we'll get to that later. As the years went by, Larry grew up and matured, leaving behind his childhood and preparing for the next chapter in his life. In 1970, a fresh-faced Larry Fink was accepted into UCLA. He would later graduate with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science in 1974. This tells us that even as a college student, Larry felt a deep desire to impact American politics. To what degree he'd do so was not evident just yet. But during his time in college, Larry did much more than just hit the books. He also joined a shadowy fraternity called Kappa Beta Phi. Now, Larry's not the only notable figure to come out of this frat. A number of high-ranking executives and Wall Street hotshots were KBP members, including Michael Bloomberg. Unfortunately, the secret society had a strict no-publicity policy, so we may never know exactly what Larry learned during his time at KBP. But what we do know is that after earning his first degree, Fink veered off course and graduated again in 1976, this time with a master's degree in business administration with a concentration in real estate. But why real estate? Well, Fink had picked up a few extra courses during his college years and developed a natural interest in the subject. He figured that selling houses in the Los Angeles area would be a decent way to earn a living and lead a comfortable life. But at his core, Fink wanted more than just a comfortable life, and he knew that the best way to make money and get power wouldn't be through selling Hollywood homes to families of four. Instead, Larry's first job was at a place called First Boston, an investment bank just about as far from Los Angeles as you can get, New York City. In 1976, he began working in the bond trading department and quickly rose his way through the ranks. In 1978, just 2 years after joining, 26-year-old Larry Fink was running the entire department. Not bad for a kid whose high school report cards caused more than a few parental sighs. During this time, Fink played a role in developing the debt securitization market. Of course, these mortgage-backed securities would later contribute to the harrowing 2008 financial crisis. But we'll talk more about Fink's role in that financial storm later. By age 31, Fink had earned himself the title of the firm's youngest managing director ever, an impressive feat. But despite these successes, not everything was sunshine and rainbows for Larry. As a Jewish man working on Wall Street, he often dealt with anti-Semitism from coworkers. Some of his teammates had even not so affectionately nicknamed his desk Little Israel. But did Fink view himself as a victim? Not really. He's actually admitted he probably should have been fired from First Boston for taking on too much risk, and has even described himself as a jerk during this time. But for a while, none of that mattered. See, Wall Street doesn't care if you're nice, they care how much money you make. And Larry Fink? He was making it rain in the halls of First Boston. That is, of course, until he got too cocky. In a power play to become CEO, Fink made a high-stakes gamble on interest rates, hoping the stock market would go in his favor and earn the company millions. The opposite happened. His huge bet ended up costing First Boston a whopping $100 million, and Fink could only watch as his life came crashing down. The crown prince who once had been in line for the throne was now completely disgraced. And in 1988, he found himself not only unemployed, but shunned by Wall Street. Now at this point, a lesser man might have booked a flight back to LAX and brushed off their political science or real estate degree. But not Larry Fink. He had aspirations far beyond managing director, and he was ready to prove to Wall Street that they've been wrong about him. In the world of finance, your network is your net worth. And nowhere is this more true than on the cutthroat streets of Wall Street. You see, deals aren't made in boardrooms or on trading floors. They're made on golf courses and in fancy restaurants over expensive bottles of wine and secret handshakes. And by this point in his career, Larry Fink was fortunate enough, or smart enough, to have forged a few powerful connections, especially during his time at First Boston. So, who was Fink's most notable contact in the late 80s? Enter Stephen Schwartzman, the former head of the Lehman Brothers Global Mergers and Acquisitions practice and the co-founder of a new powerful investment firm called Blackstone. After getting the boot from Lehman Brothers in 1985, Schwartzman wasn't ready to give up on his dream of hitting it big on Wall Street just yet. So with just one partner and only $400,000, Schwartzman had started his own firm, Blackstone. The company was a pretty immediate success, and today it's managing over $1 trillion in assets. After Fink's own dishonorable discharge from First Boston, he saw in Schwartzman a kindred soul. In 1988, he assembled a crew of traders and went knocking on Schwartzman's door with a business proposition. That same year, the two founded BlackRock, a new investment firm under Blackstone's umbrella, formed by the two men who'd been ostracized by Wall Street. With Schwartzman's $5 million investment, he and Fink became equal partners, each holding a 50% stake in the new venture. So there they were, a team of 8 entrepreneurs with a dream and a big sign that said BlackRock. BlackRock's initial focus was on fixed income investments. You know, boring stuff like bonds and treasuries. But boring or not, they were good at it and began earning millions of dollars in just a few years. What was their secret? In the same year of the firm's conception, Fink's risk management division, BlackRock Solutions, had cooked up some truly magical technology. It was called Aladdin, and while it may not have been a literal genie in a bottle, it was certainly the big secret behind all of Larry Fink's wishes coming true. Aladdin was a supercomputer designed to monitor millions of trades and analyze investment portfolios around the clock 24/7, 365 days a year. It provided BlackRock with a way to more accurately predict the outcome of every investment they made. For Larry Fink, who had learned the hard way that risk management is everything, Aladdin was a game changer. Nowadays, this piece of technology is considered an industry standard, with financial institutions far and wide taking advantage of this magical tool. Using Aladdin gives them access to a ton of historical data and market simulations. This helps them predict future scenarios for equities, bonds, and everything in between. But back in the late 80s and early 90s, Aladdin was a revolutionary concept that gave BlackRock an unbeatable edge over the competition. In fact, Aladdin worked so well that by the mid-90s, BlackRock had become one of the largest fixed income managers in the world. That's right, in less than a decade, these guys had gone from a small firm of 8 people to managing billions of dollars in assets. It was an unprecedented rise, the kind of success story that Wall Street legends are made of. And Larry Fink, he was quickly becoming one of those legends. But little did he know, more trouble would arise before he could reach legendary status. In fact, the cracks in his partnership began to show in 1994 when Schwartzman sold off a mortgage securities unit with a whopping $23 billion in assets to PNC Bank for $240 million. It was then that Fink and Schwartzman began to realize that they had fundamental differences in opinions regarding compensation. You see, now that BlackRock had solidified itself as a real player in the Wall Street's game, Fink had a clear vision for further expansion. He wanted to offer new BlackRock hires a stake in the business, hoping to lure in top talent from major banks. Schwartzman? Well, he thought it was a terrible idea. The tensions between the two eventually reached a boiling point, and that very same year, Schwartzman decided he'd had enough. He bid farewell to BlackRock, giving up his 50% ownership and disentangling BlackRock from Blackstone forever. This left Larry Fink to steer the ship all alone. Looking back, Schwartzman has admitted that walking away from BlackRock was one of the biggest mistakes of his career, and who can blame him for feeling regret? BlackRock has since become an absolute powerhouse, a trillion-dollar titan that wields more influence than most nations. But now, with Schwartzman out of the picture, Fink found himself with full ownership of the company, and with that ownership came a whole lot of power. With Aladdin as his secret weapon, Larry took BlackRock public in 1999 and began gobbling up other companies left and right. How'd he do it? Well, Fink was on a mission to expand BlackRock's reach and influence, so he was purchasing controlling stakes in other companies wherever he could. With each new acquisition, BlackRock was in control of more and more corporations, cementing Fink's power not just on Wall Street, but within the entire United States. And in just 3 years after separating itself from Blackstone, BlackRock's assets under management had ballooned to a staggering $46 billion. And in case you're wondering how this dollar amount translated into power, let's talk about Fink's role in the financial crisis of 2008. I told you we'd get back into this, didn't I? The 2008 crisis was a period of economic chaos triggered by the implosion of the United States housing market. But how did it all start? Banks had been issuing risky subprime mortgages to borrowers with questionable credit for years, fueling an unsustainable housing boom. These subprime mortgages were then bundled into mortgage-backed securities and sold off to investors. Of course, the investors assumed that house prices would always go up. I mean, what better investment than real estate, right? But this wasn't true. And when the wave of homeowners defaulting on their loans inevitably hit, the house of cards came crashing down, causing the worst recession since the Great Depression. Unemployment skyrocketed, the economy contracted, and major stock indices like the S&P 500 fell, eliminating trillions of dollars in wealth. And to make matters worse, the public's faith in banks and Wall Street as a whole was completely destroyed. Turns out, people don't take too kindly to being lied to and having their life savings go up in smoke. But when everything was crumbling and the American economy lay in ruins, guess who the government called to clean up the mess? None other than Larry Fink himself. So how did he save the day? The Federal Reserve personally reached out to Fink, asking him to help bail out big banks like Bear Stearns and insurance companies like AIG. It wasn't long before BlackRock became responsible for managing $30 billion in assets from Bear Stearns alone. During this time, they also quietly took over $301 billion of Citigroup's assets. But if you think that's a lot, we're hardly even getting started. I mean, there was virtually not a single major deal during the 2008 crisis that Larry Fink didn't have a hand in. While unemployment rates were skyrocketing and people were losing their houses, their jobs, and their sanity, BlackRock was only further cementing its status as the most powerful company in the United States. But Larry's thirst for money and power wasn't satisfied just yet. In 2009, he made his boldest move yet with the acquisition of Barclays Global Investors, an investment management division of Barclays Bank. Let's talk about how he did it. In 2009, Barclays was looking to offload its investment department called BGI. They had a $4.4 billion offer on the table from CVC Capital Partners, but that was just for the ETF unit. Barclays wanted to sell off more. Enter our protagonist, Larry Fink. The BlackRock chief had been on the prowl for a big acquisition, something to take his firm to the next level. When he caught wind of the BGI sale, he knew it was now or never. Fink went all in, putting together a massive $13.5 billion cash and stock deal for the entire BGI business. It was a bold move, the biggest play Fink had made since starting BlackRock back in '88. The negotiations were intense, but in the end, Fink came out on top when Barclays accepted his offer. It was with this acquisition that BlackRock officially became not just the United States' largest, but the world's largest asset manager. Fink has since called this acquisition a game changer for BlackRock, as it's allowed the company to grow in scale, range, and increase its already huge global market reach. Without scooping up BGI, BlackRock would likely not be the financial giant that it is today. As if this wasn't enough, Larry was already setting his sights on a new target post-acquisition: ETFs. Now, what the heck does ETF stand for? If you don't already know, ETFs, or exchange-traded funds, are investment vehicles traded on stock exchanges, just like regular old individual stocks. But instead of representing just one single company, ETFs hold a whole collection of securities. Think stocks, bonds, currencies, debt, future contracts, you name it. Before long, BlackRock controlled nearly half of all ETFs in America. Can you even comprehend wielding that much power? Since then, Larry Fink has become a major shareholder in almost every public company out there. With stakes in everything from Apple to Amazon, he has his fingers in more pies than anyone could count. But in recent years, BlackRock has taken a stand for something bigger than just profits. They've also made a bold move toward environmental, social, and sustainable investing, or ESG for short. According to Fink, this isn't just a feel-good PR stunt. It's a call to action and a push for change. You see, BlackRock's shift has sent shockwaves through the corporate world, forcing other firms to invest more consciously and encouraging the companies they invest in to develop more eco-friendly practices. But why should other investment firms and companies care what Larry Fink has to say? Well, Fink has warned them that making social conscious investments is a must if you want to stay in BlackRock's good graces. And considering BlackRock has over $10 trillion of the country's money under their management, you'd have to be pretty brave or a total fool to piss them off. But hey, at least everything Larry Fink does is in the interest of saving the planet and creating a better, more progressive society, right? Right? Not so fast. You see, with great power comes great scrutiny, and not everyone is thrilled about BlackRock's massive influence. Because while this investment company may talk a big game about sustainability and social responsibility, there are those who suspect a darker side to the firm's influence. Some have even dubbed the firm the world's largest shadow bank, painting it as a secretive force that's calling all the shots in the nation. And when you look at the numbers, it's not hard to see why this theory exists. In the US alone, BlackRock owns at least 5% of most major companies, giving it a significant say in how these corporations are run. In fact, according to the top equity holdings as the first quarter of 2024, you'll see the firm is involved with some of the biggest names in the game. We're talking ownership stakes ranging from almost 6% to over 8% in the top 25 companies alone. That may not sound like much, but when you're dealing with trillion-dollar market caps, those percentages start to add up real fast. That's a lot of power for one company to wield. Many have actually criticized BlackRock for being too big to fail, implying that its downfall would rock the United States economy and entire financial system. Of course, Fink has fought back against these claims, claiming that because BlackRock is an asset manager and not a bank, it can't be too big to fail. But it's not just BlackRock's domestic dealings that have raised eyebrows. The firm's investment in China have also come under fire, with some worried that they could pose a threat to America's national security. And as it turns out, Uncle Sam himself might not be too happy about some of BlackRock's dealings in the Far East. According to the U.S. House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, BlackRock has had its hands in some pretty shady cookie jars. We're talking over $429 million invested across 5 of its funds into Chinese companies that are considered counter to the U.S. interests, ones that have been blacklisted by the United States government. And in 2016, China actually rewarded BlackRock for its loyalty. They handed over the first U.S. RQFII license, giving Larry Fink and his team a golden ticket to invest in mainland China's domestic capital markets. Speaking of China, let's talk about their popular app, TikTok, for a moment. You know, that innocent little application that's got everyone from tweens to grandmas shaking their hips and lip syncing to the latest viral hits? Well, as it turns out, there have been some concern that TikTok's Chinese parent company might be using the app to harvest data on unsuspecting Americans. But what does this have to do with BlackRock? With its vast portfolio and close ties to the Chinese powers that be, BlackRock might have access to an unprecedented amount of information on individuals and companies alike. Some have even suggested that BlackRock's data harvesting capabilities put TikTok to shame. If true, this could give Larry Fink the power to influence what Americans are seeing on their phones, which could also influence what they buy, who they vote for, and who's winning presidential elections. But you might be wondering, what's so bad about Larry Fink having all this power if he's using it for good? If he's harnessing this control to fight climate change and improve the world, why should we even care? Well, perhaps the biggest question mark surrounding BlackRock is its stance on the environment. Sure, Larry Fink talks a big game about sustainability and social responsibility, but some have suggested that it's all just a front. After all, this is the same company that was named one of the top climate villains by The Guardian in 2022, thanks in large part to its involvement in deforestation. And let's not forget about that time in 2021 when BlackRock teamed up with a Saudi asset manager to invest in Aramco gas pipelines. Not exactly a move that screams green. In fact, a closer look at BlackRock's portfolio reveals a number of investments in companies that are actively contributing to climate change, from coal-fired power plants to fossil fuel giants. And this isn't just speculation. In BlackRock's very own 2022 company letter, they fessed up to having some serious cash tied up in oil and gas companies to the tune of nearly $260 billion worldwide. We're talking about investments in some of the biggest fossil fuel names in the business, like Phillips 66, Occidental Petroleum, Valero Energy, ConocoPhillips, and ExxonMobil. And when companies like these burn fossil fuels, they release massive amounts of greenhouse gases, which scientists suggest only further contribute to the problem of global warming. We're talking rising sea levels that could swallow up entire cities, extreme weather events that could devastate communities, and the destruction of habitats and ecosystems that could wipe out countless species of plants and animals. But here's the thing. Whether you care about the environment or not, whether you believe in the risks of climate change, you can't deny that this whole situation reeks of hypocrisy. Because on one hand, you've got Larry Fink and his crew preaching the gospel of sustainability, wagging their fingers at any company that dares to invest in anything that might harm the environment. But on the other hand, you've got BlackRock itself pouring billions of dollars into the same fossil fuel companies that are driving us towards a climate catastrophe. It's like watching a vegan lecture you about the evils of meat eating while secretly scarfing down a Big Mac in the bathroom. So much for all the talk about social responsibility, huh? It seems that when push comes to shove, BlackRock is more than happy to put its money where its mouth isn't. And it's a lot of money we're talking about. Today, BlackRock manages around $10.5 trillion, that's right, trillion dollars, making them in control of a huge portion of the entire country's cash flow. And at BlackRock's current rate of growth, it's not hard to imagine a future where it and other giant corporations like it effectively run the world. A future where the voice of the people is drowned out by the sound of money talking, and where the only votes that matter are the ones cast in the boardrooms of the wealthy and powerful. So what's Larry Fink, the mastermind behind it all, up to these days? Fink's been enjoying his power while managing to keep a relatively low profile. He's been called one of the world's greatest leaders by Fortune and one of the world's best CEOs by Barron's. And yet, many Americans have never even heard of his name. Not only does Fink spend his time running arguably the most powerful company in the world, he also serves on the boards of organizations like NYU, the Museum of Modern Art, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the World Economic Forum. But let's get to what you're really wondering. How rich is this guy? As of April of 2024, Forbes estimated Larry Fink's net worth to be around $1.2 billion. Not too shabby for a kid from Van Nuys who started out working in his dad's shoe store. But as that old saying goes, mo money, mo problems. And one of the biggest problems facing BlackRock right now is the question of who will take over when Larry Fink finally decides to step away from the throne. Investors have been sounding the alarm for years about the lack of a clear succession plan at the company, and for good reason. With Fink's outsized role, it's hard to imagine BlackRock without him at the helm. BlackRock has acknowledged the need to develop the next generation of leaders, but so far, they've been pretty tight-lipped about who those leaders might be, and that's got a lot of people worried. Because whoever takes over from Larry Fink will be inheriting not just a company, but a vast empire with tentacles that reach into every corner of the global economy. They'll have access to an almost unimaginable amount of money and power, and the ability to shape finance in ways that few individuals have ever had before. It's a terrifying prospect and one that should give us all pause. But whether you love him or hate him, the truth is that Larry Fink has the power to make or break an entire American economy with a single keystroke. And that's not something we should be taking lightly. So, what's the truth? Is Larry Fink a greedy mastermind, corrupted by power and pulling the strings to control the United States? Or is he a visionary leader, driven by a mission to create a better, more progressive society? Maybe the answer lies somewhere in between, but I'll leave that up for you to decide. Let us know where you fall in the comments. And while you're contemplating that big question, you won't want to miss our next video, because if you think Larry Fink's story is crazy, you'll want to learn all about this guy. As always, thanks for watching.